What's the best pencil eraser? That's what we're going to look at in today's video. Now, I asked members of my Facebook group what their favourite erasers were, and today we're going to test them out. I'm going to try them out with different types of pencil grade, see which one works the best, but of course there's no exact science when it comes to erasers, and if you're using them for something else, like perhaps charcoal or underwater colour, then there may be an eraser that is not as good today that might be more suitable for that particular application, and we'll talk about that at the end of the video, so don't forget to watch all the way through. So what I've done is I've started by drawing some circles on this piece of paper and I'm shading them in quite roughly. And what I'm doing is I'm doing 3 rows of circles, and on the top row here I'm using an HB pencil. Then we go a bit blacker and softer to a 4B, and in this row at the bottom here I'm going to do an 8B, and then we'll test our erasers out. Now you'll notice that I'm actually working on top of a book here. I borrowed this from a friend 10 years ago, and anyway, I'm working on top of a book here because what I don't want is to pick up the grain of my wooden drawing board. It's also important when shading areas in not to go too dark. I mean, there are times you want to go very dark and you want to press very hard, but what you need to make sure is that you absolutely won't need to erase those areas, because if you press too hard, you're going to dent the paper, and even the best eraser in the world is going to struggle to get the marks out. So I'll skip ahead in the filming because it's not one of those ASMR videos. I tried one of those the other week. I was feeling like I couldn't sleep, so I thought, what's this ASMR thing? That's supposed to be relaxing. It was like a horror movie. Whispering and scratching was like the Blair Witch Project. I was expecting Jamie Lee Curtis to start screaming, so that didn't work out for me. Anyway, I'll skip ahead to when I've shaded in all of these circles. So that took longer than I was expecting, actually. And what I'm going to do is I've got HB along the top, I've got 4B in the middle and 8B. You'll notice they get a little darker as they go down. These are softer pencils, so they're going to appear darker. I've shaded, in random directions. I've tried not to press too hard. I'm going to test 5 erasers, and we're going to test them on each of these rows here and see how they react. So the first one I've got, if I show you the packet, is this one here. So this is one of our best known stationery shops in the UK, and this is WH Smith, and it's just one of these large grey putty erasers. And I went and bought this yesterday because I don't use these really. I just find them quite unpleasant and too sticky. I think I just have some kind of prejudice against them. I'm a real clean freak, and I just don't like these. When I see other people use them, they just seem to be so sticky and so mucky and so dirty all the time. Now, one trick I will tell you for erasers is don't just start using a large eraser like this. You want to cut it into smaller pieces because it's just going to last so much longer. So I'm going to do that. And even just in cutting, it distorted it, because these are meant to be moldable. You can mold them into points and shapes and things like that. Let's start giving it a go. So I'm going to start on the HB up here. Now, HB pencils can be quite hard to remove. I'll turn it around and try it on this 4B. Not overly impressed, to be honest. Now, one thing I will say about this, and we've got other types of putty rubbers to try today, but one thing I'll say about putty rubbers is sometimes people describe them as self-cleaning, or that you just knead them and they suddenly become clean, as if the graphite on them just disappears into the ether. Well, it doesn't. It just gets into the eraser or all over your hands. It's like when people say that if you do your outlines in watercolour pencils, they'll just disappear. Nothing disappears, it's just physics. Not at all happy with that. It almost slid off the top. Let's try a different one. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. I've got a very cheap Amazon plastic eraser. Now, these do have their uses. I'll talk more about that later in the video, but I don't expect it to be fantastic for erasing pencil, but let's see. Now, can you see what we get with this is we get a lot of eraser droppings. And notice that I'm trying very hard not to say the word rubber because it has other connotations here in the UK and probably in the US as well. And I don't need the comments. Look at the muck on here that's making. And once we take it onto this very dark pencil, just like the previous one, it's a bit of a fail. Let's go on to this Helix Oxford eraser. I don't really know much about this. It feels much firmer than a putty eraser, but nowhere near as hard and shiny as the plastic eraser. So let's try this one. Again, a lot of eraser droppings. Doesn't do a bad job of lifting the pencil, certainly better than the others we've tried so far. and it will actually move this darker pencil, but it is leaving a lot of muck on the paper. Another little tip I have for you is to use a brush to remove these things. You never want to be shoving your fingers all over your work. Just gets oil on the paper. I know it's boring and annoying when I pop in and ask you to like the video, so why do I do it? Because it really makes a difference to my channel. So if the free content I put up on this channel is useful to you, please do like, subscribe, share and leave me a nice comment. Now let's get back to the video. Next, let's try one that I actually use on a daily basis. So this is a Winsor & Newton medium kneaded putty rubber. Oops, I said the word again. Now there's also another one I use. I think it's the Daler Firm Putty, pretty much identical in application to this one. It's got a little bit of film on it to protect it from dirt. And again, I'm going to cut a small piece because they last so much longer. And you see the one that I have actually here in daily use. And what I do with this actually is once it gets to this kind of condition, and sometimes when I'm erasing over watercolors, even though it's dry, it'll pick up some watercolor paint, I'll just trim all of that off. So if you cut into small pieces and then trim them when you need to, as I said, I really do discourage you from kneading them and squidging them up into strange shapes unless you need an actual small piece to do some erasing with. It does nothing for them but make them dirtier. So I've got my small piece. It's probably worth about £1, this piece of eraser. I often wonder about the profit margin on erasers because I understand paint pigments are very expensive, but how much money are they making on these things? It's absolutely shocking. So as I would expect, that lifts that nicely. Again, pretty good with this one, and probably the best so far with the one at the bottom. Now remember, we're putting them through quite a tough thing here of lifting a very large area out. Normally you'll just be lifting out a small mistake, and so you won't need to take such a large amount of pencil out. But by putting so much on the paper, it gives us a much better way of comparing which one's best. So the last one I'm testing is one that I'd never heard of until people in my Facebook group started posting about it. This is a Tombow Mono Zero, and it's a bit like a mechanical pencil, and you get refills with it. So I've got a refill of the eraser in the middle, and you press the end and bits come down. It's really, I'm really excited about this one because I love anything that's neat and tidy, and it looks to me, who is really very lazy when it comes to choosing erasers, it looks to me like this is something that could be really used for getting some tiny small details in. I'm not sure actually that this is a very good test for it because it's obviously something that's used for small delicate areas and for precision, but nevertheless we'll give it a go. Well, look at that lovely fine line. And I do believe as well that it's possible to get the refills in different shapes. I think there's like a round one and a square one. And it takes some giving it a bit of welly, as we say here in the UK, but it's lifting out fairly well. So next we'll talk about which one I think has done the best on this graphite pencil and what I think these erasers are good for. So starting with this one, I think I just don't like the colour. I probably only use this for throwing at perhaps a teenage daughter when they've got headphones on and aren't paying much attention. Next up, we have the plastic eraser. Now you might think that this is useful for nothing, but actually I use something very similar to this when I'm using charcoal, because charcoal needs a very firm eraser. You can't just use your best expensive Winsor & Newton putty eraser when you're working in charcoal. It'll just ruin it. It'll cost you lots of money. And actually, if you're going to have an eraser that's just going to get absolutely coated in charcoal, I literally keep one in the box with the charcoal. It's a white eraser, but it appears to be completely black, but it's so firm that it's good for moving things around. This one here, I didn't dislike it really. I think it's probably not fully fine art. If you're working in perhaps a harder pencil, if you're doing a lot of work in HB, perhaps for some botanical work, or you just need a good eraser for your children to use with their school projects, this one seems to be pretty solid. The Winsor & Newton with its little square missing out here, it's still my absolute favourite. As I said, I believe it's the Derwent Firm Putty. I'll write it in the description because I never remember things. But I think the Derwent Firm Putty is pretty much absolutely identical to this. In fact, I only started buying this one when the other ones seemed to be out of stock. And I much prefer this slightly firmer putty eraser than I do these really sticky, squidgy ones that appear to me to be more like the stuff you put posters up with. Finally, the Tombow eraser. Well, I actually really like this, and although it's quite a tough thing for it to get through all of that pencil, it still got through it. And I think if you're working where you need, we can take it around the edge here, where you need really precise erasing, I certainly think I'm going to start using this in my own work, because I'm absolutely terrible for using a great big lump of eraser and erasing not only the mistake, but a 3-inch swathe either side of it. I'm really glad I bought this one, not sponsored, and it wasn't even too expensive. Now, I recently made a free drawing challenge. Did I mention that it's free? I'll leave a link in the video description. You'll also find lots of other good free stuff down there. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you're going to enjoy my most popular, out of over 300 videos, my most popular video ever. It's going to give you some really fast and quick drawing tips that are going to lead to fast improvement. And isn't that what we all want? You can watch that video right now.